an agentic flow, and that agentic flow will have three agents, for example. One agent is responsible for researching the web, another one is responsible for summarizing the results, and third agent is responsible for notifying the user back. Now, ये जितनी भी हम चीजें कर रहे हैं, जब हम AI enabled application orchestration की बात कर रहे हैं, this is a classic example of like orchestrating agents.
For example, if I'm a developer, or उसमें what does it mean uh, to integrate Chinese large language models into our products and applications? Especially, I want to pick your brain on DeepSeek. Uh,
Yeah.
वो कहाँ पे स्टैंड करता है और आई मीन क्या मुझे पर टोकन कॉस्ट उसकी कम पड़ेगी? एक एक ये डिस्कशन का एक एरिया. सेकंड, द क्वालिटी ऑफ द रिजल्ट्स, क्योंकि मैं जब आपसे बात कर रहा था यू शो मी के all the benchmarks how DeepSeek is better than all that, but when I see you guys actually building products and services, you're gravitating towards OpenAI and Claude and all that. What's something that you want the developers to know about Chinese large language models?
Yeah. An important चीज ये है कि the tooling that is available for developers that actually helps in utilizing large language models for increasing productivity, वो कितना support करती है in large language models को. So for example, GitHub Copilot allows support for Sonnet, for example, and Cursor has already supports like both ChatGPT and Sonnet and few other models as well. क्योंकि like one way is कि the applications that these companies provide for interacting with the large language models, you're basically then interacting with those applications outside of your code editors and like working through a problem, right? But another way is like, can you utilize these large language models within the code editors that you're already familiar with? For example, Cursor and VS Code, for example. So उसमें कहूँगा कि like for now, there is no support in any of these editors and AI tools for developers for these Chinese models, for example, DeepSeek हो गया. Whereas, yeah.
For example, if I talk about Cursor, तो Cursor के अंदर DeepSeek की support नहीं है. You can't access DeepSeek using Cursor, huh?
Yeah. But like probably there is a way where you can relate, for example. लेकिन अभी right now there is no such support, and that's a big bummer for developers. Like if you're using you want that help right in your IDE rather than going outside your editor and then interacting with large language model and asking questions.
Okay. So now, but then at the end of the day, what we see is कि वो benchmarks में और कुछ criteria में तो वो बहुत ऊपर है. So for example, in terms of if there is a specific area where I have to use these or use these Chinese large language models because of the cost, because of the some specific feature or quality that's required, right? उस केस में अगर मैंने यूज फिर करना है, फिर कैसे करना है?
I mean, you can definitely. So, for example, if you are building AI applications or large language model applications, definitely you can use their APIs, which DeepSeek claim that their models are like ahead of some of these models that are available out there, like especially the ones that they're competing against. For example, Qwen ho gaya, Llama 3.1, Claude 3.5, and even GPT-4o. And DeepSeek claims, and by the way, I've run few tests as well. It really fares very well against these competitors. It does very well in on some of these benchmarks. For example, Codeforces के benchmarks है, SWE verified है, human eval, and there are other benchmarks as well. जहाँ पे it scores a lot. So, for example, Sonnet scores about 80 on the human eval benchmark, whereas DeepSeek जो latest model है, they score like 82.6. Looking at the numbers right now. So definitely, and since I've run few tests through their browser app, I can tell it's much better.
और इसमें using Chinese large language models has more to just developer productivity. I mean, if you talk about it, the world is now more into alliances और कुछ states हैं, कुछ major enterprises हैं, वो
Yeah,
for example एक country की innovation को prefer करती हैं as compared to others. So, for example,
yeah,
if an enterprise business wants to integrate, wants to build their capabilities on top of Chinese infrastructure, on top of Chinese uh, source of innovation, for example, in this case, DeepSeek, how should they think about this whole thing? Like, do they also get some cost reduction in terms of building these capabilities? क्या जो Chinese LLMs हैं वो सस्ते भी हैं या in terms of cost they are just at par with other Western language models?
yeah. So as far as I know, right now DeepSeek is not charging any money if you're using their app. They're probably charging for using the APIs, जो उनका जो hosted versions हैं. But जो DeepSeek के अभी तक जितने भी models हैं, so they are open source. They are open weight models, just like Llama 3.1, 3.2. So you can definitely deploy those model on your own infrastructure and then use them without paying any money to anyone. So you can definitely do that. It's जो देखें जो LLM के ऊपर जो पूरा जो एक ecosystem होता है ना, that what makes like some of these proprietary models different. So for example, ChatGPT की अगर बात करें, so they've started basically adding a lot of features to make it sound like an application. So for example, yesterday they released the tasks feature in their app where you can create asynchronous tasks. Those tasks can be even, doing some research asynchronously for you and then notifying you about the results, or it can be reminders or anything, right? Then ChatGPT as well as Claude Sonnet provides you a canvas feature where you can basically work in a canvas alongside the large language model to improve the results and probably execute code and improve on ideas as well. Whereas जो अभी जो for example DeepSeek के like the level of tooling that they provide on top of their LLMs are like limited. It's just a chatbot powered by a really powerful LLM. So I think tooling is more important and tooling and as well as the developer
Supporting
tools
ecosystem.
exactly और उसकी उन models की adaptation वो developer tooling में कितनी होती है, that is also very important.
Or I mean, you talk about ChatGPT tasks. I mean, of course, topic तो जरा different हमारे लिए, but because it's so
Yeah,
cool. जब मैं
yeah,
भी कल उसको
sweet.
use कर रहा था, so
Yeah,
help us understand what is ChatGPT task, ये है क्या, और
yeah.
what sort of tasks or what sort of work we can get from the uh, tasks feature. ये क्या कोई agent है, ये क्या है, how to what this is about?
Yeah, so this is definitely an agent. So what it does is, so for example, you wanna create your own. Yeah, for example, I'll give you an example. So you're interested in knowing about the latest AI releases every day. So every day something is happening, right? So अभी आपके कुछ sources हैं, like you go there and find out about okay what's happening, but you can now delegate it to ChatGPT and ask it like, okay, every 5 p.m. send me a list of AI news to my inbox, and it will do that for you. So what it does is it schedules the task in the background, and then when the time, for example, at 5 p.m. every day, it goes and browses the internet and basically find out the topics for you and then send it over to you over email. So it's definitely agentic. Number one, it has an agent for searching the web. Another agent is basically doing summarization for you. And another agent is basically then notifying you.
और से ये जो टीनेजर्स है मैं थोड़ा सा क्योंकि ये एग्जांपल तो सिंपल है लेकिन आई जस्ट वांट टू हाउ इट्स हैपनिंग ये मतलब
Yeah.
हिस्टोरिकली ये चीज जो थी नॉर्मली फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू इमेजिन यू सब्सक्राइब टू अ सर्विस फॉर
Yeah.
एग्जांपल एक ऐप है जो पूरे वेब को क्रॉल करती है एआई बेस्ट न्यूज लेकर आती है और वो आपको एवरी 5 पीएम सेंड कर देती है बट नाउ यू हैव उस केस में आपने एक प्रोडक्ट को सब्सक्राइब किया होता है जो
Yeah.
कोड के थ्रू ये चीज कर रहा होता है और आपको वो इन्फॉर्मेशन डेली सेंड कर रहा होता है यहाँ
Yeah.
पे वो चीज आपने आई मीन खुद क्रिएट किया है थ्रू अ टेक्नोलॉजी
Yeah.
अंडरलाइन टेक्नोलॉजी
Yeah.
यू हैव नॉट सब्सक्राइब टू एन ऐप
Yeah.
आपने वो चीज एक आपने इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज के अंदर आपने कुछ एजेंट्स को अनेबल किया है कि वो जो ऐप हिस्टोरिकली आपके साथ काम करती थी आपको सेंड करती थी
Yeah.
अब वो काम आपने खुद अपनी मशीन के थ्रू अनेबल कर लिया
Exactly. So what it does is it
हाँ
happens on their server. So I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of queues. And what is a queue? So you create an item on the queue and you specify a time for it. Like this is an event on the queue that will happen at this time, right? So and then you can set its recurrence as well. So what they do is when you write to the LLM about creating a task, what it does is it knows like okay, you want to create a task. So they know okay, they have to call a function which will create a task on the queue. And that they've implemented a huge queue which can cater to like millions of users they have right now. So it will create a task. Now, what will the task do? The task will basically trigger an agentic flow, and that agentic flow will have three agents, for example. One agent is responsible for researching the web, another one is responsible for summarizing the results, and third agent is responsible for notifying the user back. नाउ ये जितनी भी हम चीजें कर रहे हैं जब हम एआई इनेबल्ड एप्लीकेशन ऑर्केस्ट्रेशन की बात कर रहे हैं दिस इज अ क्लासिक एग्जांपल ऑफ लाइक ऑर्केस्ट्रेटिंग एजेंट्स राइट सो अभी एजेंट्स लाइक यू कैन डू इट थ्रू यूआई एंड ग्राफिकल इंटरफेसेस बट इमेजिन करें ये जो टास्क वाली जो एग्जांपल है जैसे मैंने आपको बताया इन दिस एग्जांपल हाउ मेनी flows you can create. So, for example, so imagine that you write down all the agents that you support, and through LLM, you basically orchestrate those agentic flows. And then for the execution, so like number one, you can do synchronous execution, like you create a task and you execute it. Number second is you can do delayed execution, for example, scheduled executions. For scheduled execution, there has to, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया, they must have implemented a queue. They create a task on the queue with the time, and then at that time, basically, their agentic flow triggers and does a wonderful job. It's exciting.
अगर मैं डेवलपर्स की बात करूं
Yes.
and if we have to if I'm a developer and I am trying to figure out what does these tasks mean for me. For example, what are the things that I can do from this? Yeah, ये सिर्फ non-developers के लिए ही है. Can you think of something that developers can
Yeah.
accomplish much better through this chat GPT tasks or something?
I thought about it and I read the documentation as well, but I couldn't find anything. Oh, imagine if this task could trigger a webhook, right? So webhook instead of like sending the details to my email inbox, imagine if it could trigger a webhook with the results जो भी मैं काम करवाना चाह रहा हूँ. So for example, I say, imagine I'm a stockbroker, for example, and I say, okay, मुझे आज के आपने every day send me the most hot stocks, right? And imagine I have another application that processes that information, right? So I'm sure at some point they'll provide an API where we can basically configure our webhooks in this agentic workflow. So when the flow executes, when the task executes, it triggers a webhook, and that webhook is basically, that event is then captured by our application, and then, application can take care of whatever it want to do with जो भी हम उससे करना चाह रहे हैं. And I think there is a lot of promise for developers in doing that. Right now, we create these applications through different agentic frameworks, for example, CrewEye or Autogen or like LangGraph. We deploy those agents somewhere, and then we basically those agents exactly like trigger a webhook at the end to pass on the information to our own applications. But like if OpenAI has introduced this, I mean, we do not need to deploy our agents anywhere. Instead, OpenAI can take care of like the agent flow and then create a trigger a webhook in our application and pass on the information. So it's going to be very exciting.
तो एक चीज जो मैं अंडरस्टैंड करना चाह रहा हूँ, और ये सैम अल्टमैन से भी वो दफा पूछेगा कि फॉर एग्जांपल every time there's a new release for ChatGPT, there are a lot of companies that go out of business. So
Yeah.
now you talk about OpenAI, agentic AI frameworks,
Yeah.
आपने LangChain की बात की, DeFi, mostly तो इनमें से हमारी टीम भी यूज कर रही है.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm trying to think is कि जितनी भी so for example if there is an agentic AI frameworks already there, और अब मेरे पास $20 में वो पूरे का पूरा framework मैं on top of OpenAI भी leverage कर सकता हूँ. What does it mean? क्या what are the things that you think would ChatGPT build on top of their infrastructure? क्या वो एप्लीकेशन लेयर पे इस तरह जाना शुरू कर देंगे जिससे आप बता रहे हो, या वो फॉर एग्जांपल कोर पे ही रहेंगे कि कंप्यूट सॉफ्टवेयर स्टैक? व्हाट्स योर आइडिया अबाउट दिस?
नहीं, 100%, और मुझे लगता है कि करना चाहिए. आई एम श्योर दिस विल कीप फ्यू कंपनीज आउट ऑफ द बिजनेस और अ लॉट ऑफ आइडियाज. सो दिस इज अ लॉट ऑफ ट्रैक्शन दीस डेज फॉर एआई एजेंट्स, राइट? अब एआई एजेंट्स का सबसे बड़ा जो चैलेंज है, एंड देन that to address that challenge, most of these companies like ये जो open source frameworks है, they've started enterprise offerings as well. And वो enterprise offerings क्या है? How to orchestrate and host and deploy these agentic AI models. अब to build those AI agents, what you do is you basically, so for example, OpenAI की बात करें, so you obtain an API key from OpenAI. Everything those agents does is done by OpenAI, जो ChatGPT की जो APIs हैं, for example, but the application is hosted somewhere else. So then you have to like think about its ops and observability and everything else. But imagine if OpenAI starts offering these agentic flows, for example, where you can write your own agents within the ChatGPT application. I mean, and then basically allowing you to trigger those agentic flows, for example. So they provide you an API for triggering those agents, and then the ability to configure webhooks to capture the results and everything. I think it's an exciting space, and they must do it, by